The first thing I did was remove the hub by unscrewing the plastic nuts. I broke loose each lug nut. I did not take them off, of course, because the truck needs to be jacked up first. Making sure the parking brake is set, I went ahead and raised the truck with the jack, and then I lowered it onto a jack stand, keeping the jack tight in place. All of the lug nuts could now safely be removed. I turned the wheel to make the caliper easier to access. This is the caliper. I'm going to remove it first. On the back side, there are two star head pins that hold the caliper on. Using a T55 star head socket, I remove the caliper pins. The pins were hard to break loose, so I had to use a cheater bar for more leverage. But once they were loose, they came out with little effort. In order to make the caliper lift off easier, I compressed the brake pads in using a C-clamp. After a little bit of compression, I removed the C-clamp. That allowed enough space to easily lift off the caliper. I set the caliper in a safe spot, secure enough to where it wouldn't fall. In the past, I've used a bungee cord to secure it. I do not want to damage the brake lines. With the help of a flathead screwdriver, I can now remove each brake pad. The next step was to take off the caliper bracket. There are two bolts that need to be removed that holds this on. The bolts did not come loose easy. I had to use a cheater bar to break them loose. But once I broke them loose, it took little effort to take them out. I could then lift the caliper bracket off. Next, I was going to take off the old rotor. There are two round clips that held it in place. I had to pry each one up and then unscrew it by hand. Once the clips were free, the rotor slipped right off. Before I put my new rotor on, I made sure it was very clean. I then slipped my new rotor in place, and I added my clips. I took the old clips, and they were warped from prying on them, so I flattened them out with a hammer. I used a deep socket to help seat them in place. I can now return the caliper bracket and secure it with its two bolts using an 18mm socket. Once the caliper bracket was in place, I could now install my new brake pads. The pads just slip over the clips in the reverse order that you take them off. These brake pads did not come with new clips. Fortunately, my old clips were in really good shape. I dressed them with a little brake grease to help them out. I could now reinstall the caliper. I had to compress the dual pistons. In this case, I used a specialized C-clamp that had a forked end. In the past, I used a regular C-clamp and spanned the pistons with a board. Once the pistons were compressed, I can release the C-clamp. I fit the caliper back into its original position. I made sure the rubber pin boots were in good position. They will need to receive the caliper pins with ease. Each caliper pin was greased with brake grease. I tightened them with a T55 star head socket. The brake pad installation was now complete. I could now return the tire and take the truck off the jacks. I then repeated this whole process and installed brakes on the other side. Once both sides were completed, I started the truck up and pumped the brake pedal until it felt firm. I then went on a successful test drive.